Not really a horror story, but I used to play in a group where we shared hosting duties. One guy, though, could only host if his kids, two tweens, were allowed to play with us. I guess he just couldn't or wouldn't tell them no. They ruined the game whenever they played. So, do not invite your kids to play D&D with your adult friends without getting their express permission first, and do not condition your ability to share group responsibilities on your kids being able to play. Children are a wonderful thing, and I've seen kids play some really fun and awesome D&D campaigns and create great stories together. But, at the same time, children can also suck sometimes, and you shouldn't force your group to play with them. So this is a semi-minor horror story and more of a case of several small bad things leading to a big bad thing as opposed to anyone's fault. But it still sucks, so it belongs here. I have been in an online play-by-post Mutants and Masterminds campaign for a bit now. Not the ideal way to play any TTRPG, but time zones make it necessary. And we all managed to have Sundays free for a few hours of lined-up FaceTime, so it worked out well enough. I'm fairly new at the game. In fact, aside from a one-shot before this to test the waters, this was my first playthrough of it. So I made a relatively straightforward character. Super strong, super tough, heals fast, but no ranged abilities and lower mental defenses. A flying brick without the flying. The group was tasked to go deep into the jungle and find a MacGuffin, a rock, from another dimension. Along the way, we tussled with a rival group of superheroes, fought a giant bird monster, and some crazy stone dinosaurs. But the real trouble came when we hit the mind control plants. Remember my low mental stats? Well, I failed to save spectacularly, by 3 degrees in fact. In Mutants and Monsters, the more you fail/pass a check, the better or worse the result. So my character is completely mind-controlled, bad in any game, but combined with the play-by-post nature and some other events, it just gets worse. The first issue is Dice Maiden. Now, I've got no qualms with using bots to roll, except this one. It honestly seems to not only skew rolls low, but single digits low. All but 6 out of my 32 rolls have been below 10 on a d20. In fact, only one of our 5-person team has a positive ratio at a whopping 15 to 28. Honestly, do not use this bot. But that wouldn't be so bad if it weren't for the usual play-by-post issues. As said, normally we're all pretty good, and it's rare more than a day goes by where someone hasn't posted who needs to. But between real-life events of several of us, we haven't had the usual Sunday session for 3 weeks, and such, this single combat has dragged on for, at this posting, 23 days, and I haven't been able to play since turn 1. After about a week, I couldn't muster the enthusiasm for even peanut gallery flavor posts anymore, and I haven't checked the game servers in a week as of posting this. I got a message from another player that they finally got me out of the plant's attack range, but I was still mind-whammied. Though, if I wanted, I could expend my single hero point, expendable resource that lets you redo a roll and adds plus 10 to the roll if it's below 10, to re-roll my save. Except, with my current stats from being whammied, I'd need a nat 20 or a 10 plus 10 just to tie the DC. I admit, I told them I just didn't care about the game at the moment anymore. It's no one's fault, no one intended this to happen, but going so long just sitting at the table, even if it's a digital one, will kill anyone's enthusiasm for a game. I said the GM can ping me if this combat ends with anyone else left alive. I am literally the party tank and main damage dealer. Everyone else is a glass cannon or support, one of whom is apparently about to die. But I just don't have it in me to pretend to be hyped at the moment. Can't really blame him for not being hyped. Being stuck and being unable to play for 23 days, especially when the rest of the party is in an intense combat situation, can absolutely kill your enthusiasm for a game. I'm not going to give advice on how to avoid this situation in play-by-post, because frankly, I have no idea how to avoid the situation in play-by-post, because I've never played in play-by-post. My solution would be to not use effects like this that can take a player out of the game, but I do understand why a DM wouldn't want to cut status effects like this. RNG can also, be a real prick. As somebody who plays a ton of Destiny, I am well aware that RNG can really screw you over, even multiple times in a row. Of course, it is impossible to confirm whether it is just bad luck or a bad bot. Who knows? This is another story from the first D&D 5th edition campaign I ever ran, albeit much later in our game's lifespan than the first one. I think many DMs have made the mistake of allowing a piece of homebrew content they perhaps shouldn't have, but this experience really felt like it took things to the next level. All names are pseudonyms as usual. There is actually only one particularly important character of this story, and that would be Sarah. You see, she has recently lost her character, and being that she wanted to continue playing in our game, she needed to make a new one. We started going over potential class ideas when Sarah confided in me that she had recently finished a homebrew class she was working on and wanted to play as it in my game. It is worth noting that despite my troubles with her as a player in this campaign in the past, I knew Sarah to be a very experienced dungeon master, and so I foolishly trusted her to implement a homebrew class that would be fair, balanced, and interesting. Interesting ended up being the only mark that she hit. She showed up to the next session to debut her Frankenstein's monster of a class, showing off what she dubbed as the Swiftfoot. The class was a bizarre amalgamation of monk and rogue, getting most of the best features from each, and a large emphasis on gaining a bonus class resource for expending all of your movement in any given turn. This actually seemed to be a fairly neat concept. The problem was that you could then expend that class resource to do some incredibly broken things, such as spending a single point to guarantee 3 critical hits on your turn with a single attack. No save, AC ignored, no way to avoid the damage. I wasn't particularly pleased with Sarah for bringing this abomination to my table, nor with how smug she seemed to be about making a ridiculously powerful class to undoubtedly trash my game for the second time. But, being that I was already behind schedule, I figured I would let her play this one session and see how things went. Fast forward to the second half of the session where Sarah had successfully trivialized most combat encounters I had planned thus far. The party had been tasked by the princess of a fledgling kingdom to track down a band of notorious bandits and deserters and wipe them out. Emphasis was given multiple times as to how dangerous and professional these bandits were. Sarah, of course, did not care and decided she would sneak off to deal with the camp all by herself after the party located it. I begrudgingly agreed, certain that even the Swiftfoot couldn't survive this encounter alone. I was right. The problem was that Sarah's class absolutely hinged on using all of her movement. No movement, no class resource, no BS. She strolled right through the gates of the camp, twirled her glaive in a menacing fashion, and failed horribly on initiative. She was promptly grappled, restrained, and slaughtered by the entire camp. Strength was her dump stat, so she likely wouldn't have broken free, even if she survived past the first turn. Cue Sarah blowing up at me in spectacular fashion, angry at me for making the encounter too hard, saying that the entire situation was BS and I shouldn't have let her go if she couldn't win. I tried to remind her that in our session 0, I explicitly stated that just because something exists in my world doesn't mean it's your level, and that this encounter was balanced for the entire party to handle. She wasn't having any of it though, and proceeded to argue further and get angrier until she rage quit the campaign. In hindsight, I definitely shouldn't have let her run that class when I just knew there was going to be issues. I don't think I'll make that mistake again. I would have likely kept Sarah as a player longer otherwise, but who knows, maybe that would have just ended up with something worse happening down the line. I need to make a video about DMs and players handling Homebrew one of these days, but yeah, Homebrew is awesome. I love Homebrew in Dungeons & Dragons games. It allows you to have pretty much limitless creativity in D&D. However, you do need to have some level of control over what happens and what goes into your Dungeons & Dragons games, especially when you're the dungeon master. Sarah is the definition of a selfish player. Going into a combat encounter meant for the group alone is bad for multiple reasons. Number 1, it's a dumb idea and it got Sarah's character killed, which is never fun for anybody. But number 2, on top of that, even if this was a doable encounter, it would have been an extended period where Sarah would be basically the only person playing the game. This can be pulled off, but a lot of the time it just results in the rest of the group feeling left out, especially if the encounter was meant for everybody to enjoy. On a side note, while the homebrew was obviously broken and dumb, the idea of rewarding a player for using all their movement speed with some kind of thing is really, really cool, and now I'm making a magic item that takes advantage of that exact system. So thank you, Sarah, you did one thing right. This is not my story, it happened to an acquaintance. English is not my first language, so I apologize in advance. In this system, challenge rating is made in a way that challenge rating 1 is a challenge for a group of 4 level 1 player characters, or for 1 level 4 character. As an example, a level 9 giant spider has challenge rating 2. Encounters are harder, but fewer and reward far more XP. Table began with the group having a minor solo scene for each, and they got to the city to meet for the first time. Fighter, a city guard, had a sparring session outside the city with a fellow guard. Rogue ran and hid from robbing a corrupt merchant, then came Cleric of the God of War, my acquaintance. They were all level 4. Cleric was camping for the night. Once morning comes, he would have only a few hours of travel to get to the city. DM then tells him to roll perception, which he does, and notices that there are 2 wolves attacking him, as he apparently camped near a wolf's den. The campsite was chosen by the DM, no input from the cleric. Roll initiative, combat starts, things are not going great. The wolves, combined, have a challenge rating of 1, which means it is a challenging fight for 4 level 1 player characters. The second round begins with a cave wolf, CR2 level 8, the pack's leader, arriving. This is now a challenging and even unfair fight for the whole group. To a single player character, it is a death sentence. In 2 turns, he is dead as he had no chance against an encounter this hard. So, Cleric is dead in his introduction. DM just says, I thought your Cleric was smart and strong, but he camped near a wolf's den and lost in a fight with a CR lower than his level. That was pathetic. Again, level 4 player character against 2 level 2 wolves and 1 level 8 wolf. Cleric said he did not want to play anymore, left the call and decided to take a break from tabletop role-playing games. Oh hey, your character gets introduced and then instantly dies. What a great way to start a campaign. This DM was trying to pull off an action opening, which is great. Action openings are really fun. A lot of D&D games start slow, so it's very refreshing to have an action-packed beginning, but you need to make sure the action-packed beginning doesn't instantly murder your players. Now, I know challenge rating in pretty much every game is completely opaque and sometimes quite ridiculous, but try to just play test encounters. Ease on the easier side for your first ever encounter, unless you have a plan to make sure the player characters don't die, because it's not fun losing your character in the first instant of gameplay without much input from you, the player. Oh boy, where to begin with this one? Sorry for length, but this story takes quite a few turns. So my circle has, well, had a friend who was stuck as a forever DM. He's a fairly decent, creative guy, comes up with some clever encounters and puzzles, uses character backstories in unique ways, so no one complained much, though he's always rubbed a few people the wrong way and started a few small fights due to poor phrasing and selective interpretation of the rules. Nothing game-ruining, but to set the scene, he's been on people's nerves for a while. I should also probably specify that he's terminally ill, so he maybe gets a bit more leeway than he otherwise would. More on that later. So one of his campaigns has been on the verge of implosion for a while. He's had it out for one player, we'll call her Druid, for months. At one point, he presented what looked like an open-ended puzzle, but shut down every creative solution we could think of, debuffing and punishing players for everything we tried. So for the next puzzle, we stayed in the hallway and cast a bunch of spells to scope it out, test the wards, etc. And he flipped his lid because we were being cowards and lazy and unoriginal and wouldn't go into the room. One player, the Barbarian, quit over the abuse, and the DM was convinced it was for the better because the player was only happy if we were fighting, and he wanted to run a more puzzle-heavy session? Meanwhile, I've dipped my toes into DMing, and he wants to be one of my players to give him a reprieve from DMing. It's been fun, but he has major main character syndrome, and none of the other players are able to actually do much or move the narrative forward. He's doing his damnedest to derail the plot at every possible junction and to overpower any other player's idea. Every one of my players is having issues with him, and when I tried talking to him about it, he just deflected by saying, they aren't doing anything, and if I don't take charge, the campaign would never go anywhere. So finally, I started implementing more consequences for his actions, and repeatedly punishing his character for the stupid things he does in character. He argues that I'm picking on him too much, but he's the only one doing dumb stuff, so he's the only one facing consequences for that dumb stuff. Actions have consequences, I tell him. Anyway, the next puzzle at his session had a giant chasm with some sort of gravity well mechanic. We tried a bunch of tools and spells to cross it and grab the MacGuffin and return it safely, and Druid managed to dexterously cross a rope to get back there. But we'd already been here for like 3 hours, solving tedious puzzles, and no one was having fun anymore. She has a massive dex bonus and asks if she can just skip to crossing back across the chasm in the interest of time. But the DM insists. She rolls multiple times and roleplays for it. Bored, Druid jumps off the cliff with the rope tied around her waist so the rest of the party can pull her up. DM rules that because of the gravity effect, despite her casting Slow Fall, this broke her spine and paralyzed her forever, and no mages in the world could fix it. He repeats those fateful words to me, "Actions have consequences." Oh no. A few more similar events transpire in that session, and the next, the details of which I won't bore you with. But at the end of the day, everyone in the party is fed up with him, and we decide to just call it there. I'm still friends with him, at least for the time being, and somewhat having fun and wanting a campaign to play in besides the one I'm DMing, so I stupidly agree to migrate my character to his other campaign. The first thing he has our party do is brutally kill off the rest of my former party as a face roll boss fight, followed by a character performing an autopsy on Druid to reveal that she had a brain tumor, which is why she was acting so... His words, not mine. So that was in poor taste, but I want to keep playing with my friends, so I keep showing up. His next session featured... I summoned 20 gallons of water to put out a fire. The DM ruled that it flooded the entire library we were in. 20 gallons is enough to fill like a medium-sized fish tank? He had previously explained that we could see a staircase downwards, so I protested that it would have drained down the stairs, even ignoring the part that there wasn't even remotely enough water to fill an enormous room. He said that the staircase, which had previously been in full view, was actually covered in a trapdoor with a solid enough seal as to not drain the water. He argued that our paladin was metagaming by using a reaction to impose disadvantage on an advantage attack, because in character, she wouldn't know that was rolled with advantage. Then, at my next session DMing, the apparent BBEG gave the party a chance to join him. Now, this dude's character had already been viewed as highly suspect by the rest of the party for a number of reasons, both real and imagined, both in character and personal. This character decides to feign allegiance to the boss, then try to betray him and backstab him. The villain had a time stop ability and paused time to evade and counter his attack, then return to his original position. So from our ranger's perspective, all she saw was this guy walk up to the BBG, pledge allegiance to him, then drop to one knee because she never saw the attack that caused him to fall. So in character, she decided that obviously she would 100% believe that he was betraying all of us and shot him, and naturally, she rolls a nat 20 and downs him instantly. She then points out, I don't want to be a dick, I'm not trying to meta too much, but I just want to warn you, if my character saw anyone heal him, she'd assume they were betraying the party too and might shoot them too. I'm torn on this because honestly, yeah, 100% she's right, that's exactly how it would look, but at the same time, it sucked for the players to be told, one of you is down for the fight and the rest of you can't save him. If it was anyone else, I probably would have protested or hand-waved some excuse, but this player had been causing problems for long enough, and I'm not proud of this, it was satisfying to see what happened here. So, I allowed it. The party killed the boss and stabilized the problem player's warlock. I figured, hey, here's his chance to explain himself and figure out how to patch up relationships between the characters. But no, he leaps to his feet and starts yelling about, "Where's my knife? Where's my dagger?" Which, in his mind, would prove that he was trying to stab the villain in the back, but to the party, it looked like he was trying to avenge his new master. Honestly, I was proud of them for not metagaming and allowing for the possibility that the party wouldn't always get along and forgive each other just because the players were friends, and the weird thing is, the problem player said he wasn't mad, that he totally understood why the ranger would have reacted that way. We stopped there for the night, and my phone soon blew up with an essay about how his character was going to devote his entire life to killing the ranger now, even if he had to become the new Grim Reaper himself to do so. Oh yeah, long story short, too late, I know. Death took a vacation. Anyway, while all this is happening, there's more drama happening in the original game he had DM'd for, the one with Druid. You see, they were originally from a Destiny 2 clan, and he had been bragging in their Discord about a bunch of extremely prestigious accomplishments, complete with screenshots. One screenshot included his opponent's Twitch name, and sure enough, typing that in returned a video of the streamer losing to some of the most blatant hacking and cheating imaginable, so they banned the player from the clan and server. Oh my god, he's a Trials of Osiris hacker too? There can be no mercy for this man. At this point, he's absolutely lost it and is accusing our barbarian of hacking his account to make him look bad because they shared passwords for D&D Beyond a ways back. He's claiming that the barbarian is trying to sabotage the DM's Destiny account because he was simping and mad about the treatment of Druid, despite us having video footage proving it was him hacking. So yeah, he keeps trying to drag us in to vouch for him and asking us to find evidence that he's been framed. Meanwhile, we decide to give this guy's D&D campaign one last session to get some closure on our characters' arcs at the very least. And he spends the entire time hyper-focusing on one other female player, not Druid. I suppose I should have mentioned, Druid wasn't the first time he'd done that. This was the third or fourth time he had all of his monsters and mechanics target one woman at the table, even when they had to suffer disadvantage to do so, or when there were much more appetizing, logical targets in play. Anyway, we've all had enough and politely inform him that we will no longer be playing at his table, nor will he be welcome at ours. As we're spreading the word about how and why we've lost a player and DM within our circles, two of our female players, who did not know each other by the way, so I know it was legit, come forward saying they're relieved because he had been... You might want to sit down for this one. Yeah, it turns out he's been faking that terminal cancer diagnosis to try and coerce female players into flying out to sleep with him before he died. And presumably that's why he'd been focusing his monsters on them so much, to punish them for rejecting him. If the Destiny nonsense was the last straw, I don't even know what to call that one. We initiated Operation Fireball, and now he's been purged and mass exiled from basically all of his friend circles. His last words to me were, "You can kick me out, but your campaign's problems won't end with me. You'll see." I'm still not sure what I'm supposed to see. We're having a blast now. I did bring his character back as an NPC briefly because I thought the whole becoming the new death to exact revenge on the ranger thing would actually make for an interesting arc, but the will of the dice eviscerated him before he even got a turn. It's oddly karmic. I didn't want to turn it into a poor taste former player curb stomp battle like he did with his own campaign, but the dice have spoken. It's good to know that cheaters did not prosper and evil was not rewarded in this story. That guy is the ultimate villain of Crispy's Tavern. He's a manipulative incel who tried to coerce women into sexual favors using the worst possible, most distasteful thing ever. He's got main character syndrome, which I definitely never like in D&D campaigns, and he's got god complex while he's DMing, targets players, and runs a generally boring campaign. Top it all off with the fact that he cheats in Destiny 2's Crucible, the literal dumbest, most pointless place to cheat in all the video games. Not that you should be cheating in any video game. Seriously, don't be lame. We've talked about kicking players like this out many times, but I also need to say that if you want a satisfying ending for your characters, don't stay in that guy's campaign, because I guarantee that they are not competent enough to give that to you. And with that, we are going to end today's episode of RPG Horror Stories. If you guys enjoyed it, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of my content, then you can check out our Q and Play series, where we answer your questions in a rambly, unscripted format while playing some video games. And while you're there in the cards, subscribe to Crispy's Tavern to get more of our content right as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down into the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment God complex to let me know you made it to the end of the video. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.